I just want to welcome you this morning to the Temple Way online pilgrimage. You've never heard of such a thing in your life. Online pilgrimage, and it has taken off, and long may it continue. Because for those of us who've always wanted to go on a pilgrimage, like far, to Jerusalem, wherever you decided to go, I don't know, you could have gone to Lourdes, you could have gone to Mecca. Sometimes it's just not affordable. But now you can do it. You can do it from your own front room, from your own bed. You could be on a pilgrimage. And I'm so impressed by that. So I pray for, for blessings for next year, that the pilgrimage will go on and continue. And for years and years and years to come. So we're talking about, just to end off, going alone. The journey, but journeying alone. Like, what does that look like? Like, why go alone? And I wanted to specifically reference Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, going alone. Maybe the disciples never thought about this day. They always thought, we're always going to be together. We're always going to be together. There's never going to be a chance, an opportunity where he's going to be alone. We are at his side. But this is what happened. In Matthew 26, verse 36 to 46, it says, Jesus went with them to the olive grove called Gethsemane. And he said, sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took Peter and Zebedee's two sons, James and John. And he became anguished and distressed. It's not the Jesus we know. He told them, my soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. I mean, if your mate says something like that, that's pretty serious. You're like, you know what? I'm here for you. I'm going to stay awake. I'll do what I need to do to stay awake. I'm going to wind down the window and catch breeze in my face. I'm going to drink a cup of coffee. I'm going to do a couple of laps around Gethsemane, but I'm going to stay awake. Because he's saying his soul is crushed to the point of grief. And this is Jesus, the Jesus who was always upbeat, had the answers. Maybe not always upbeat, but always had the answers. And now all of a sudden, this is how he's feeling. And so in verse 39, it says, he went on a little further and he bowed his face to the ground praying, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done and not mine. And then he returned to the disciples and he found them asleep. And he said to Peter, couldn't you watch with me for even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak. And then Jesus left them for a second time and prayed, my Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done. And then he returned to them again and he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. So maybe they didn't do the laps around Gethsemane. Maybe they didn't get the cold breeze in their face of the cold Jerusalem nights. Maybe they didn't even pick some olives to eat and stay awake. And they surely didn't have any coffee beans on them to keep them and their eyes open. So he went to pray a third time, saying the same things again. And then he came to his disciples and he said, go ahead, sleep, have your rest. I don't think he did it like that. That's me, like, sleep then. But no, go ahead, sleep. He knows they need their rest. But look, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Up and let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here. So sometimes you have to go it alone. In this case, Jesus was going alone. He was doing this alone. When I was younger, much younger, I used to love to travel. I travelled alone. It was the times when I was in uni, 19 and 18, and the government used to pay you to go uni. So there was no tuition fees. Can you imagine such a day? And there was no need for loans. There was also grants given out. And so in that time, especially in the first and second year more significantly, my grant money was just there because I was working as well, living good. I don't know what happened to the connection there. I would have done it much better. But yeah, I would travel kind of like twice a year or every year at least to New York or to Canada to see family, but not to be with family, just to kind of just to be out there. When I would go to New York, I would end up in one massive music video. I thought I was just living in R&B land, that I was in some hip hop kind of wonderland. Do you know what I mean? So I loved it, and I love being out there. I love the idea of being on the other side of the world in 6 hours when no one knew my name and my face, and my accent became a magnet. When I got to New York, I often imagined, you know, just meeting some tall, handsome man. And I met some strange ones. I met one day who said he would like to come back to England so I could introduce him to the Queen. Not likely, mate. And so strange situations I would have out there. I was alone. I could do what I wanted. I could do what I wanted in my head. I could do what I wanted with my feet. I could go anywhere. As I said, when I was in certain areas like Harlem, I would imagine that I was a rapper, I was a singer, I was a background dancer walking down the streets. Always with a fresh relaxer. Always with a sharp haircut like Toni Braxton. And one of Mona's leather jackets. And I would create my own itinerary and spend my own money and not have any second opinions about the clothes I bought. But there were also drawbacks, because traveling alone meant that I was lonely. I couldn't speak to anybody. I ate alone in restaurants. I saw movies alone, and I was vulnerable. As I said, I met the strangest of men. And one of those that I met, I remember we took a picture on the Brooklyn Bridge. And it was not until I got home and developed the photos, because those days you couldn't get instant photos. You had to take it to a man in the chemist. He had the negatives, and he would dip that in some water in the back room and give you back your pictures. And when I got these pictures, I noticed that the man's clothes were like really dirty, like mud all over it. I don't know if he had just done a robbery or what. But that's what loneliness did. It brought vulnerability. I was safe though. He didn't harm me. I just remember watching the clock and remember hearing my mama's voice really loud and thinking, what's the time? I'm going to make up some story. So I said to him, I'm going to get a call from London. Got to go, mate. Ran to the station. He never saw me again. I'm here. I'm safe. I'm happy. Married. Cool. Children. Made it. Could have been peak though. Anyhow, it made me vulnerable being alone. I bought music alone. I couldn't share that with anybody and say, what you think about this tune? Or I would bring back music that wasn't here yet, because in those days, America was at least 6 weeks ahead of everything we were doing. So there was a level of pride in doing that, but I was doing it alone. The pain of loneliness, and it wasn't really painful, but it was just boring at times, made me look at the variations in the toilet handles in the public toilets. Like, ooh, how does this look? This looks different than it would in London. I wouldn't recommend you going around playing with toilet handles in public toilets, but that's what journeying alone can do. And at times I would flush the toilet and see which way the water would swirl around. Was it clockwise or was it anti-clockwise? Because in England, we go clockwise. So going alone wasn't always good. I often think about it when Jesus called his disciples and he walked with them or worked with them for 3.5 years, and they did everything together. So solid crew. They were just ready. They were like, look, nothing can touch this. We're going on forever. We're going to have a kingdom that will not end. They slept, they ate, they cried, they even laughed together. Sometimes they shared food. They definitely lay their heads in the same place. And there was training. When they were in training, you could see the results of their transformation. Sometimes they would get pulled up on it. With James and John saying they want to burn fire on people's head in this city, Jesus would be like, all right, we've got to learn another lesson with you guys. But they were tight. They were close. But little did they know that all this training was leading them up to being separated from him. He was going to be giving his life sacrificially, and they didn't quite understand that. He was going to be crucified. One of the worst ways to die ever. Not the death of our Saviour and our King. It shouldn't be like this. He shouldn't die at all, actually. As far as they were concerned, he was preparing for kingship and they were preparing for their special roles. In Matthew 26, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's praying and he knows what is to come. He's tried to prepare his disciples. He's tried to prepare them for the difficult time ahead, but they've resisted at every turn. All he asks them that day is to just stay awake and pray. He says, look, the weight of the world, all the wrongdoings everybody's done today, before, and way after are on my shoulders. He's saying he's crushed. He tells them and they don't understand the magnitude of his suffering. He's crushed. Let's just go back to sleep. He can't be crushed. And he prays to the Father about the weight that he's currently feeling. He looks around and he sees these boys asleep during the time that he needs them most. And he wakes up and he addresses them and he addresses Peter directly. Couldn't you stay awake with me one more hour? When I think about that, I just can't help thinking that my hand would... Couldn't you just stay awake with me, Peter? You again. Stay awake with me, Peter. This part reminds me of Mona. She was one of the first to drive. She had her own car. And Mona would take you anywhere, but she had 2 requests. I think one of them was a loose request. Maybe the expectation of a couple petrol monies. And the other one was that you stayed awake. This was the main request from Mona. Stay awake on the journey home. And there would be times when I would be in the front seat and I would look at the back seat at the other 3 in the seat, sometimes 4 in the back seat, and they would be sleeping. And Mona would be cussing and saying, it's not fair. Who's going to keep me awake on the way home? And I would say, right, let's just put some talk radio on. We call it LBC now. And she would put the LBC up loud, and I just remember I'll be blinking, my eyes were going. And whilst listening to LBC, I started to talk about and merge my dreams with what LBC was saying because I was falling asleep. And Mona would be vexed, and she vowed not to be in the same position again. But time and time again, as soon as there was a hot event, we was gone in that car. And we were falling asleep again on the way home. So some parts of our journey, and I'm sorry, Mona, but some parts of our journey, we have to do alone. We got a journey alone. We can beg our friends to stay awake with us a little while. We can say to them, look, come with me on this part, but there's some bits you just have to do by yourself. There's some bits where nobody can get in your head to do it with you. It's just you. But it's not just you. It's you and the Father. And the weight is great. It's heavy. You feel crushed at times. But it's you and the Father. The comfort in knowing is that your friends are in the space, but maybe they may not be able to reach right within when you're going through that difficult time. But in these spaces, you recognize a few things. You recognize that you have direct access to God. And you can tell him how you feel. And you can ask him to help you in the situation, or at least have the strength to deal with it. Number 2, you see the humanity in those around you. You learn their limitations. You have compassion on their weaknesses. You're like, you're human. You can't go this road with me. There's bits that you just can't touch. Number 3, you have moments of self-reflection. You understand what you're going through and the weight of it. But you also understand equally that God's will is being done, even in the toughest times. And that brings comfort to know you're in that safe space of his will. Number 4, you gain resilience and you build faith muscles. You're on your own, so you have to start praying more. You have to start considering the journey and preparing to continue the rest alone. Number 5, you are ready to carry the crosses of life before you. So you know what's ahead. And you know it's difficult, and you know what you have to prepare for. So you get ready to carry those crosses of life before you. Number 6, you get to face your opposition, as Jesus says, the enemy. He was on his way. The betrayer was on his way. Number 7, you become more sacrificial. You're ready to, okay, let me give up what I need to give up. Let me go through this. Let me just go through this. Let me sacrifice and go through this. And number 8, just like Jesus, after the journey alone, you raise up new and stronger than you ever was before. So as you travel alone, and you will, through parts of life's journey, just know that even if your friends are sleeping, you are never truly alone. Thank you, Temple Way, for having me. What a privilege it has been for the 3 days. I have learned so much. I have grown so much in areas in such a short space of time for the challenge of doing this. And my prayer is that you get to complete the 40 days and look back and see a different person or a fresh perspective, and that you become more sacrificial, more giving, live in the most excellent way. And also that in this time of Holy Week, that you live in gratitude of the sacrificial life that was given to you, and that agony in Gethsemane that it took to carry your stuff, your wrongdoings, to nearly 2,500 years ago, or just shy of that. That your stuff was in that garden back then. And remember that, and be grateful for that this week. Be grateful for that for your life, and you'll live differently. I'm surely going to do that, and I'm doing that, and I'm on the pilgrimage of life with you. And so I really thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you have a good day. Much love to you. Take care. Bye-bye.